Before the First World War erupted, Europe stood on the edge of a transformation it didn't fully understand. Powerful empires, Germany, Britain, France, Russia, and Austria-Hungary, were locked in a silent contest for dominance. Each nation believed it had the right to lead the future, and each feared falling behind. Alliances were created, not to start a war, but to prevent one. Ironically, these alliances formed a fragile web that could snap the moment one thread was pulled. Industrial progress brought prosperity, but it also fueled rivalries. Nations built mighty factories, produced weapons on a scale never seen before, and expanded their navies and armies. More machines, more steel, more ambition. Europe was preparing for something, even if its leaders didn't yet know what. National pride made people hopeful yet suspicious. Every country saw itself as superior. Every country believed its culture, values, and military strength were unmatched. This growing pride, mixed with fear, was dangerous, like dry wood waiting for a spark. One region in particular, the Balkans, was a boiling pot. Small nations sought freedom, large empires refused to release control, and every victory or defeat shifted the balance of Europe. Tension rose with each passing year. Many believed a big war was not just possible but inevitable. Armies grew larger, borders became guarded, and new weapons filled arsenals. The world was moving at a breathtaking pace, but the direction was dark. Leaders talked of peace, yet prepared for conflict. People dreamed of progress, yet marched toward destruction. Europe was becoming a powder keg, and all it needed was a single spark. That spark was coming. June 28, 1914 began like any other summer morning in Sarajevo, yet by noon it would change the course of history. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and his wife Sophie arrived in the city for an official visit. Crowds lined the streets as their open-top car rolled forward. None of them knew they were entering one of the most consequential moments of the 20th century. In the shadows, a group of young nationalists waited. They believed their homeland had the right to independence and saw the Archduke as a symbol of foreign domination. Among them was a 19-year-old named Gavrilo Princip, driven by fiery ideals and a sense of destiny. The couple's car took a wrong turn, one small mistake that changed everything. As the driver tried to reverse, Princip stepped forward, pulled out his pistol, and fired. Franz Ferdinand and Sophie collapsed into each other. Within minutes, they were gone. The news spread across Europe like wildfire. Shock quickly turned into accusation. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia, where Princip and his group were from. Serbia denied direct involvement, but the damage was done. A diplomatic crisis unfolded, fueled not by the assassination alone, but by decades of rivalry, fear, and political mistrust. As alliances activated and nations prepared their armies, the assassination in Sarajevo became the fuse igniting the powder keg. What could have been a local conflict spiraled into something far greater, dragging Europe toward a war it had secretly been preparing for but desperately hoped to avoid. Sarajevo had provided the spark, but the world had already laid the explosives. After the tragedy in Sarajevo, the great powers of Europe moved with startling speed. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Russia mobilized to defend Serbia. Germany backed Austria-Hungary. France prepared to defend Russia. Britain watched closely, knowing neutrality might be impossible. Lines were drawn. The Allies, France, Russia, Britain, stood against the Central Powers, Germany and Austria-Hungary. The world was stepping into a war bigger than anyone had imagined. Germany launched an ambitious plan: defeat France quickly before Russia could fully mobilize. To reach Paris, Germany invaded Belgium, neutral territory protected by treaty. Belgium resisted fiercely, and Britain, honoring its promise, joined the war. What Germany expected to be a fast victory turned into a long and bloody struggle. The Battle of the Marne shattered the illusion of a quick war. French and British forces pushed Germany back from the gates of Paris. The armies dug in, and a massive front stretching hundreds of miles took shape. This was the birth of trench warfare, a brutal new reality. Soldiers lived in deep trenches filled with mud, rats, disease, and constant danger. The land between opposing trenches, no man's land, became a death zone of barbed wire, craters, and machine gun fire. Daily life was a battle for survival. Many soldiers who weren't physically wounded suffered mentally from endless bombardments and unrelenting fear, a condition known then as shell shock. The war had begun, but no one realized it would last years and destroy empires. Europe was trapped in a deadly stalemate, and millions were about to lose their lives. By 1916, the Western Front had become a graveyard of failed offensives. Both sides knew that to win, they needed something new, something powerful enough to break through trenches and cross no man's land. Britain unveiled the answer: the world's first tank. The early Mark I tank was slow, loud, and unreliable, but it was revolutionary. Its caterpillar tracks allowed it to crawl over rough terrain and crushed barbed wire beneath its heavy armor. Machine guns and cannons gave it the power to support infantry like never before. The tank made its dramatic debut at the Battle of Flers-Courcelette in 1916 during the larger Battle of the Somme. Out of 49 tanks, many broke down before reaching the battlefield, but those that did terrified German soldiers. These steel monsters, impervious to rifle fire, lumbered forward through smoke and chaos. Although their initial impact was limited, tanks had proven their potential. Meanwhile, the war spread far beyond Europe. Battles erupted in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. From the deserts of Arabia to the cliffs of Gallipoli, soldiers from across the world, India, Australia, Canada, Africa, were drawn into the conflict. It was becoming truly global. Back home, societies transformed. With millions of men at war, women stepped into roles previously closed to them, working in factories, serving as nurses, driving ambulances. Their contributions kept nations running and forever changed expectations about women's place in society. Technology, strategy, and human endurance were all being reshaped. The war was evolving, and so was the world. The years 1917 and 1918 marked a dramatic shift in the war. Exhaustion swept across Europe. Armies were drained, economies strained, and civilians struggled to survive shortages and hardship. In 1917, Russia, devastated by years of fighting, erupted in revolution. The Tsar fell, and the Bolsheviks seized control. One of their first decisions was to pull Russia out of the war. With the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk signed, Germany could shift its forces from the Eastern Front to the West. But a new power rose to counterbalance Germany's gain: the United States entered the war. Germany's unrestricted submarine attacks on American ships and the infamous Zimmermann telegram convinced America to join the Allies. Fresh troops, abundant supplies, and strong morale gave the Allies new life. Battles like Passchendaele showed how far the stalemate had pushed both sides, fighting through mud, rain, and unimaginable loss for only a few miles of ground. Yet, new tactics at Cambrai proved that tanks and coordinated assaults could break entrenched defenses. By early 1918, Germany launched the Spring Offensive, a massive push intended to win the war before American forces arrived in full strength. They gained territory but not victory. The Allies regrouped, strengthened by U.S. soldiers, and began pushing the Central Powers back. The war's momentum was shifting. Empires were weakening. The end was approaching, though no one knew exactly when or how. While battles raged on the front lines, entire empires began to crumble behind the scenes. Years of war had drained treasuries, caused food shortages, and sparked protests. People were tired of fighting, starving, and waiting for peace. Austria-Hungary, a patchwork of ethnic groups, struggled to stay united. Different nationalities demanded independence. The empire was collapsing from within. The Ottoman Empire, already weakened before the war, lost territories to Arab revolts supported by the Allies. In the Middle East, new borders began to take shape, setting the stage for future nations. Germany faced strikes, hunger, and political unrest. The naval mutiny in Kiel in late 1918 spread across the country. Soldiers refused to fight. Workers took to the streets. The German monarchy fell, and a republic was declared. The Central Powers were falling apart. Each defeat on the battlefield and each protest at home pushed them closer to surrender. The war that began with empires fighting for power was now destroying the very empires that started it. By mid-1918, the Allies were ready to strike back. The arrival of nearly 2 million American soldiers turned the tide decisively. Confidence returned, and Allied commanders launched a series of coordinated attacks known as the 100 Days Offensive. These offensives shattered German lines. Tanks, aircraft, improved artillery, and fresh troops gave the Allies overwhelming advantage. Slowly but steadily, they forced the Central Powers to retreat. The Hindenburg Line, Germany's strongest defensive position, fell. Town after town was liberated. The German army, once the strongest in Europe, was exhausted, outnumbered, and outmaneuvered. Meanwhile, Bulgaria, the Ottoman Empire, and Austria-Hungary all signed armistices. Germany stood alone, fighting a war it could no longer sustain. Finally, with revolution at home and defeat on the battlefield, Germany requested peace. At 11 a.m. on November 11, 1918, the guns fell silent. The Great War was over. When the war ended, Europe awoke to devastation unlike anything it had ever seen. Cities lay in ruins. Fields were cratered and burned. Millions of homes were destroyed. Entire regions had become wastelands. The human cost was unimaginable. Soldiers returned missing limbs, eyesight, or the ability to sleep without nightmares. Families mourned loved ones who would never come home. Civilians who endured occupation and bombardment struggled to rebuild their lives. Economies collapsed. Food was scarce. Influenza swept across the globe, killing millions more. Yet, amid the ruins, people began to rebuild. Countries repaired roads, railways, and cities. Families tried to start again. Hope returned, slowly, but steadily. But peace came with challenges. Past anger, mistrust, and humiliation continued to burn beneath the surface. The world had changed, but not all of it had changed for the better. In 1919, leaders from around the world gathered in Paris to shape the future. The most famous treaty that emerged was the Treaty of Versailles, aimed at securing lasting peace but also punishing Germany. Germany lost territory, overseas colonies, and the right to maintain a large army. It was forced to accept full blame for the war and pay enormous reparations to the Allies. Many Germans saw the treaty as unfair and humiliating. Economic hardship deepened. Anger grew. These emotions would later influence dangerous political movements, ones that would eventually lead to another world war. Meanwhile, the map of Europe changed dramatically. New nations emerged: Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, and others. The Ottoman Empire was dismantled. The Middle East fell under new Western mandates. The treaty intended to build peace, but in many ways, it planted seeds of future conflict. In the aftermath of war, societies transformed. Women, who had taken on crucial roles during the conflict, demanded rights and equality. Many nations granted women the right to vote for the first time. Technology that had been developed for war, radio, aviation, engines, now changed daily life. Communication improved. Travel became faster. The world became more connected. The League of Nations was created as the first international organization dedicated to resolving conflicts peacefully. Though its power was limited, it represented a new idea: global cooperation. Yet, beneath progress, pain remained. Millions struggled with trauma, poverty, and the memories of what they had witnessed. Nations rebuilt, but the scars stayed. The Great War forced the world to rethink politics, society, technology, and humanity itself. World War I reshaped the world more dramatically than any conflict before it. It toppled empires, redrew borders, and set new powers on the global stage. It changed how wars were fought, how nations dealt with each other, and how ordinary people understood sacrifice and peace. From the trenches of Europe to the deserts of the Middle East, from shattered cities to grieving homes, the war touched every corner of life. It showed the world the terrifying cost of modern conflict and the strength people find in unity and resilience. Though meant to be the war to end all wars, it left unresolved tensions that would, within just 2 decades, lead to another global conflict. Yet its lessons remain. Courage. Sacrifice. The urgent need for peace. The Great War changed the past and it shaped the future.